Now on UK Health Radio, treat yourself to an upgrade. Pack away your low self-esteem. Leave behind that empty feeling. Stow your fears and doubts in the overhead locker. And go from stress to authentic success with Danielle Sachs.
Hello to you, wherever you are in the world. Another week, and I have to admit that we can really feel now that the spring, the summer even is in the air, because we have these beautiful blue skies, a good oxygen, the sunshine is coming out. We need the vitamin D. I'm for sure more excited in the morning to get up, to do my exercises, to go for a walk or for a bike ride, anything. You can feel that there is movement in the air. And isn't it amazing that when winter is over, we really need that sunshine. We really need that smell of nature. The difference between winter and summer is always, I love it, because I, for one, need sunshine. I don't know about you, but sunshine makes a difference in my life. It is probably also the light of that blue sky that makes a difference for our stress management. Because when you wake up and you see that blue sky, it does make a difference. And today I'm quite excited because I have been seeing a lot of clients with burnout this winter. And today I'm actually quite excited because I'm going to talk to Michael Leiter, who is in Canada and who is a researcher and a writer on psychology, focusing on burnout. So we're going to talk all about burnout today. So if you have someone in your environment or you yourself, you feel that you are close to a burnout or suffering from a burnout, this conversation is really going to be for you. Because burnout, what is it exactly, and how can we make the workspace a better place, that the well-being of everyone working in the organizations and in the companies, and even for people who are independent consultants, coaches, who are in healthcare, all these people. It will be interesting to talk to Michael about how he sees burnout and how we can prevent it and how we can make the workspace a better place. So I'm really excited to talk to Michael. And just before I have this little break, I just want to let you know that he has written extensively on all these researchers' issues everywhere in North America, in Australia. So he's done a lot of, I think he's got more than 30, 40 years of expertise. So it's really worthwhile. And most recently, he wrote the book, The Burnout Challenge, with Christina Maslach. And I'm sure, being in Canada, I'm sure we're going to talk about that book as well. So having a little break, and then I'll talk to Michael Leiter just now.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
Welcome back. And as I said in the intro, I am so delighted to speak today to an expert in burnout, and welcome Michael Leiter.
Very good to be here. Very good to talk with you, Danielle.
All the way from Canada. I am so impressed. Technology is a beautiful thing, isn't it?
When it works, it's beautiful.
True. Now, let's start maybe with a question about what happened in your life that you became an expert in burnout?
Oh, how I got to this. I was, me, sort of a definitive thing was years ago, actually back in the 1980s, I was doing some work with a residential mental health facility here in Nova Scotia, Canada. And there were particular tensions between the psychiatrists and the psychologists that were sort of built into the structure of how the roles were defined, how the work was defined. And it was really, a burden on the people who were doing this kind of work. And one psychologist, a clinical psychologist working there, who was, very good, very dedicated to this kind of work, decided that he was going to leave the field entirely and go start a bed and breakfast in Lunenburg. And said,
like many others.
Wow, like many others. And they said, well, that's a big decision to walk away from all that, all that training and all that experience and do that. And around the same time, I read the first article written by Christina Maslach and Susan Jackson on job burnout. And so I said, oh, this is capturing part of that. And this is very interesting. So I phoned Christina Maslach at UC Berkeley on the other end of North America. And those back in the days where you used a telephone to communicate with people. And so I phoned her and said, I'd like to come work with you on this for a year. And she said, okay, I've got an office. You can come out here and work with me for a year.
Wow.
So I said, okay. And so we packed up and drove across North America and ended up in California and spent the year learning about burnout. And we wrote our first article on sort of the role of supervisor and coworker relationships and the people's experience of burnout. So that was our first article, and we've been writing things together since then. The Truth About Burnout was a book that we wrote in the 1990s that got a lot of traction, and now our new book is on the Burnout Challenge, and it's really pulling together these ideas that we developed and learned from and experienced through our careers.
Can you define what a burnout actually is? Because a lot of people, everybody talks about it, and I see it in my practice every day. But what exactly is a burnout?
Right. Well, burnout, people use the word in a lot of different ways. And, people, in sort of everyday speech, you can use words, pretty much. You got a lot of latitude. You got a lot of range. You can use a word. And people
But can you misuse the word burnout?
Oh, yeah. For sure. And it is quite a bit, particularly when you get beyond everyday speech and you're talking about, writing in a professional journal or writing in an academic journal. Then you've got to have something where, people in other publications who are talking about the same thing, using the same word, that you're talking about the same thing. Otherwise, it's very hard to get into.
That's why I'm asking you the question, what it is, because a lot of people.
So, yeah. Well, we go with who articulated it. The World Health Organization and its new, compendium of diagnosis, it defines burnout in a way that aligns with exactly how we define burnout. So we think they're brilliant. Which is a syndrome of, that's a stress reaction. It's a syndrome of chronic exhaustion combined with cynicism about your work, combined with a lack of accomplishment, a lack of efficacy. So it's being discouraged and cynical and distant and tired. It's that combination of things. So a lot of people use it to just say, well, I had a bad day at work or I burned out for this, or particularly just refer to it as exhaustion, burnout, which we think is a bit much, because if you're talking about exhaustion, you can just say exhaustion. You don't have to use a different word. But we like burnout having a more distinct place of this, which is a serious state of mind to have that combination of exhaustion, cynicism, and discouragement, because it's hard to get out of that. You don't have nothing to hold on to. So whereas people who are just tired, but they really believe in what they're doing and they really think they're accomplishing great things as they're wearing themselves out at work every day. That's a more manageable problem. I mean, it's not easy, but there are more footholds you can get out of that kind of thing than you can out of that really totally negative state of exhaustion, cynicism, and discouragement.
So, Michael, can you tell me, is burnout always job related then?
Well, the way we define it, and the World Health Organization, again, the definition says it's a workplace phenomenon. While people have used the term burnout in other domains of life,
Yes.
like parenting or,
Yes.
playing sports or whatever, that yes, but with job burnout, there's been like 1,000 research articles a year for the past 30, 40
Wow.
years on job burnout. And there's been a few articles on other uses, other domains of burnout. So we just don't know as much about it just because it hasn't been looked at as thoroughly, as completely. Certainly the idea that people can be exhausted and cynical and discouraged about other domains of their life, whether it's playing chess or raising Cocker Spaniels. It could happen. Yeah. But so it's not, it's like I think it's this existential crisis that's particularly relevant to what's really important to you. And careers are really important to people. Other domains can be as well, but careers are really important to a whole lot of people. So, and that's what, I can speak to. That's what I've really studied. It's what's going on at work. So I'm not discounting that there's other forms of this, but I don't have that much to say about them.
And what are the symptoms for somebody listening? What are the first symptoms or the symptoms of when can you feel that you are going into burnout?
Okay, well, and that's important going into, because everything that's defined in terms of the Mass Like Burnout Inventory, which is what we use to measure it, it's all measured. The issue is how often you experience something. So it's like one is being tired when you're starting a day at work, like being tired in the morning before the day even starts at work. If that happens once or twice a year, well, it just means you've got a social life probably. But if it's happening 3 or 4 times a week, now you got a problem, right? So it's a matter of degree. And so it has there isn't just sort of this total cliff. You're on top of the cliff, but then you fall off and you're burned out. It's more of this gradual increase of these things. So one of them, if you're regularly, before you even get to work, you're already exhausted. That's a signal. That's something. How often is that? That's happening a lot.
Yes.
And that's a problem. If you used to really love doing the work that you do and interviewing people or providing medical treatment or helping people find things at the library, whatever your job. If you used to really like that and think this was a really important, I really like this job. I like seeing these people. And then you're just more and more find, as soon as you see a customer or a patient, whatever, coming towards you, you're going, oh God, not on them again.
Yes.
So that's that cynicism coming in, that distancing. And the more that you're thinking, you're dealing with some kind of imposter syndrome. I can't really do this. A bit of that. That's okay. That's part of being, in this world where it's a very demanding world. But if that starts taking over everything, then, those are the kinds of signals to really get to the full scale of the burnout syndrome. There needs to be a lot of that very regularly and rather intense. But bits of that are giving you a little signal that says, maybe I should start thinking about things. Maybe I should reflect on this a bit more. Maybe I'm getting a little out on a limb. That's looking a little shaky.
And I believe that you are also specialized in looking at the workplace then. So you're not really looking only at the individual, but more at the social environment of so how can one change that cynicism and that exhaustion at the workplace itself? So can you?
Well, that's where, a lot of what our book is about, a lot of what our work is all about is that rather than, learning how to put up with a bad situation, you should change the situation. And so we're very much looking at, and again, I'm more of an organizational psychologist, so I don't really, I don't work with individuals. I work with management systems and go, look, if you want really to get the most from your people, if you want to be recognized as a workplace that is a good place to work, you want to be able to recruit people in a very competitive kind of hiring field, which particularly in healthcare is having some very steep mountains to climb there, then you need to manage the place so that you aren't being advertised as a place that drives people to burnout. You don't want to be known as a burnout shop, in this world. And you'll get a few people that actually they're pretty scary. So most people don't want to really put up with that. They want to get something. So that's where we go in. Like we've developed along the burnout scale, we have one called areas of work life that looks at workload. Individuals say, tell us how do you perceive your job in terms of workload? It's manageable, how unmanageable. Sense of control. Can you make important decisions about how you do your work, or are you micromanaged? That kind of idea. Reward. Are you able to do work that you really enjoy? Are you getting recognition for that? Community is a very big one. The quality of those relationships with your supervisor, with your colleagues, with your clientele, they're really important, how those interactions are going. The fifth one is fairness. Do you see justice in your interactions with it? Do you see other people being treated fairly around you? Are you in a world
I think that's
really
a big
respects
one.
people? That's a big one. And the sixth one is values. And we ask, are my values and the organization's values, are they alike?
So can you sum them up again for me, those six? Because I really like them.
Okay. Workload, control, reward, community, fairness, values. So those six. Wow. And we basically say, we're asking people, does this work for you? Is this in line with what you're looking for? Like some people, and again, I work a lot with healthcare. Healthcare is very value driven. People are in there because they want to do that. Yes. They've got something that's important to them that they want to accomplish through their job. And so that is a very big one, if that's it. But for everybody, really, the quality of those relationships is really important. Humans, just at a very fundamental level, they want to be part of a group. Yes. And they want to not just be tolerated, but they want to be a respected member of that group, a full member of that group that is valued for, we're not just tolerating you. We really like that you're here. And people feel good when they're getting interactions with people that confirm that. And if they go up and they say good morning to somebody and they just walk by and don't respond, they get worried. Was that what they had earbuds in? They weren't hear me, or what was that?
Yes,
so,
I agree.
We're very sensitive to those cues because our survival in a career or because in life depends upon being part of that group. So
we don't like rejection. Hey, Michael.
We don't like rejection. It drives people towards burnout. The more of just not, there being really nasty stuff, but the more just little rude stuff, inconsiderate stuff people encounter, the more they're moving towards burnout. And the more they're moving towards burnout, the less able they are to have really pleasant interactions with other people, because when you're exhausted and cynical and discouraged, it's hard to be really pleasant, and then other people are going, oh, that's a grumpy person. And it's reciprocity.
Yes.
Is huge.
Yes.
So whatever you're receiving, you tend to bounce it back. Whatever you send out, it tends to bounce back at you in terms of these relationships. And so that is a place where we have one stream that we work with, where we do family therapy with work groups. We basically go in with a facilitator and say, okay, we got the message that this work group is stuck. You've got a social culture and nobody's having fun here. Or maybe those three people are having fun, but everybody else is having a hard time. And so let's talk it through. Let's start understanding what's going on. And then how can we really just change how you interact with each other in a very behavioral way? Let's do more appreciation, acknowledgement, welcoming of people. Let's do less of eye rolling when people are talking, or snarky remarks or anything like that. And we work with the groups. And, put in a facilitator. These work groups, you got to know what you're doing as a facilitator, because they've been working together for a long time often, and they've got baggage. And you've got to be
Can
able
I ask you,
is
it all about nonviolent communication? Like in communication, and like you say, no judgment, no gossip, no, is it all about trying to connect really with each other instead? Is that what you guys
Well, that's a piece of it,
facilitate?
but really much more is about pushing the positive, because rather than
Oh,
saying no, this, that, and the other, because it's really one, you can't really outlaw sarcasm or things like that.
mm,
People, they have agents. People annoy you some of the time, and you need to let them know
mm,
that's not on. And so, so it isn't being sunshine all the time, but it is the idea that if we could just push more positivity, if we could just say
mm,
how, like when you go to work, the next time you go to work, well then say good morning to three more people than you usually say good morning to, just sort of to reach out a little bit further.
yes.
You keep track of how often you really have thanked somebody at work or
Mm,
expressed appreciation for their contribution. How often has people, we have a good scale for that just measured. And how
mm,
often have people said that to you? Well, okay, can you start, let you keep track of that for a while. Now, can you up the rate? Can you start?
mm,
So we really, I mean, we do spend time on what is going to be our group protocol for reacting to rude behavior. What do we agree? When you think somebody's being rude to you, dismissive of you, inconsiderate, what do we agree is the right thing to do? Do you
okay.
confront them right there? Do you speak to them offline or someplace else? Do you take it to the boss? With one emergency department we were working with. Well, when they're working with patients, they can't just sort of step off and have a little
Mm,
conversation about their
mm,
relationship. They've got to deal with what's there. But what they developed was they had these little badges that they wore as part of what they were doing, and essentially when a colleague said something like that I find offensive, then I would tap on the button like that, and that means I'm calling you on that, and we're going to talk about this when we
oh,
have a chance. So you don't interrupt the emergency medicine, which is really important
mm,
and timely,
mm,
but you don't let it pass either. You don't say, "Oh, we were
okay.
busy, so I just let it pass." No, you tagged it, and
Mm,
now that puts on both of you. You're obliged to come back to it. So that's when you're trying to change the social dynamics of a group. It is hard, but you've got to build in structures. It doesn't
yes.
just telling people to be nice
Mm,
or saying, well, we want a positive social account. That doesn't get you anywhere. You got to be very structured, very
okay.
specific, and people have to have real responsibilities. And then you
Yes.
need a forum, which is what we provide with our groups, our therapy groups, where people talk about where it's psychologically safe. Bring it up. You got a facilitator who's
Be
going to look after
vulnerable,
you,
be honest,
and
yeah,
right, and that changes the
of
work
course.
environment, and in a way that's really important. And what I find, it's hard to go into an organization and say to the CEO, "Well, we're going to treat burnout. We're going to have people work less." And they go,
Mm,
"I don't think I want
mm,
you in here."
mm,
But if you go in and say, one thing that's really aggravating your people and wasting a lot of time and wasting a lot of energy is people being rude and dismissive
mm,
and inconsiderate of each other. It's a rare CEO will say, well, we like that here. That's the way we want
mm,
to be. No, they're going to say, no, people shouldn't be doing that nonsense
mm.
here. They should be, professionals. They should be grown ups. They should be supporting each other. And so it's much easier to get traction to work on that kind of stuff. And it makes it, and then people can manage work life. People can deal with control issues better if they have a better social environment with one another. So, yeah, that kind of idea.
I really agree. I have quite a few clients here with burnout, and it's
Mm-hmm.
always about the colleagues that were rude to them or the boss
Mm-hmm.
who's not treating them well. And that's how it's
Yeah.
often starts, I would say, like
Yeah.
ignites
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing, it makes the whole thing even worse. And if
Yeah.
then on top of that, the workload is too much or there's a lot of pressure of
Yeah.
deadlines, the whole thing
Yeah.
starts to accumulate. Is
The whole
that
thing
how it
starts to,
goes?
that's how it goes. Yeah. Workload is an important piece of it. But even within workload, like people will do a whole lot of work that they really love, that they really think
Mm,
is important, that they really believe in, but they'll get tired very fast with work they think is a waste of time. It's just administrative nonsense. it takes them away from what's important. So what it is you're doing, as well as the load. And that ties into these other issues of values and fairness and relationship issues. So it's a complex field that way.
Yeah.
And in the burnout challenge, like that's what we're sort of laying out this framework. We give an example of working, trying to deal with these relationship issues in there as well, and just give some directions about what is, how do you get something started in terms of implementing real change in how the work is done. Because what we learned from the pandemic and the big lockdown, whatever phase, was that work can change drastically on a dime. It isn't this idea, we can't change anything. You can change everything if you have to. And we did. And that's why people right now, I think, are much more, have much less tolerance for management saying, it must be this exact way. You must go back to no, we don't. Actually, we were more productive when we were working wherever we wanted to work rather than coming into the office every day. A lot of fields are saying that. So a lot of things have changed.
I agree.
It was very stressful. And for some people, it really was a change for the worse. But for a lot of people, it worked. So it was you got to look at it. You got to pause with the problem for a while rather than just say, everybody's got to do such and such.
And if somebody listening today is hearing this and saying, well, my environment at work, is like we talked about rudeness and all these kind of things. What is the first step that you think that someone needs to do if they feel that they're going towards a burnout? How can they talk in the workspace? To who do they talk to? What do they do?
Right. Well, that's where,
that's where you come in.
That's where we come in. For a lot of people, talking to their manager is not a very welcoming kind of solution. Sometimes, and we can see that when we're doing our assessments, sometimes we can see, the manager is actually the problem more than anybody else in this unit. And that, when we're working with it, we say, okay, now we've got to do some individual work with that manager. And we got to go, look, here's how you're being perceived by your people. And what we know, that's not really great for your management career. Like this, we're hopefully working with an organization that does not encourage bullying and that kind of behavior amongst their leaders. Then you're not going to go anywhere if you get known as a really bad leader at this level. And you're going to have a hard time with your people as long as you are here. So,
Michael, has there been
to change?
Is it right to say that there's been a big evolution in that field? Like 20, 30 years ago, the bullying, the leader who was dominant and now there's a change in leadership. There's a change in working environment. There's more focus on the well-being of the people. Would you say that has gone through an evolution?
Yeah, that has definitely been a trend in that direction. It's not universal. And one thing that drives it isn't necessarily the good-heartedness of leadership, though there is some of that as well, but it's liabilities. Now, people can win, suits against their organization for being bullied, or just, if nothing else, tie up a lot of their resources into legal work or people. Managers have to look out for what's going on among people within their work groups, because bad behavior there can again rebound as a liability onto management if they're not. So they have to know if they're aware, and I think particularly in European workplaces, if you're aware if there's a problem and there's a history of this kind of complaint, and you've done nothing about it, you've just let it continue, the liability grows on the employer in that kind of way. So I think it's a combination of the legal context has increased the liabilities, but also, there's the wisdom to know if people are more fulfilled, if people are working with other people the way they really prefer to do, then they're going to be more productive and you're going to be a better workplace for everybody. So I think that's my bit of optimism. I think there are a lot of leaders who aren't interested in changing anything. And one needs to move cautiously within this framework. But I think that there are some bright spots, and those are the bright spots are the ones I get to work with, are the ones who really want to develop things in an important way.
Yeah. Here in Europe, I have to say that more and more companies invest in the well-being of their people. You can really feel the last decade, there's quite a shift in that. Does that make a huge difference, you think, on the workflow?
Oh, I think it makes a very big difference. And I can see, when I go to conferences, like in work psychology conferences, and when I go to the United States, they're much more concerned about recruitment. They want to hire the next great person. In Europe, they're much more concerned about workplace health, making the best of the people that they have and giving them the best environment, because it's really strikingly different when you go into these
that's interesting
to see what's being promoted by, the people who are setting up booths, selling services and things like that. It's a very different environment.
Can you tell us a little bit about, because I'm sure with your experience of so many years, has burnout in the job environment, is it still increasing?
Well,
how is that?
And it's hard to tell there was the pandemic and it really did put a bump in things. And again, so it's a very mixed field, but within healthcare, where again, I do a lot of my work, it's definitely elevated now to what it was. I've done surveys with groups before, 2020 and now, in the last year or two. And you can see that, the scores, particularly on exhaustion or cynicism, have become worse. The efficacy is more mixed in that for some people at the beginning of the pandemic, for healthcare people, it really took a dip because they couldn't do anything about it. They had this horrible disease and they didn't have the tools. But now that they have a lot of tools, a lot of things they can do in terms of vaccines and treatment and follow-up, et cetera. So that efficacy, because we've been through something tough and we learned how to deal with it. And that's a big lift for people. So it's interesting that way. That part of it's more mixed. So, but certainly with a lot of things, and right now, again, a lot of places are short-staffed. And so people are overextending themselves just to keep up with people are wanting a lot of services, but it's harder to get even when the money is there, it's hard to get the personnel to deliver those services. So who is there is definitely overextended, and that can wear on them after a while. You can put up with that for a while. After a while, you start getting cynical and say, well, nobody really cares. We're not looking after them here. And,
we have it here in the healthcare, in the education, in the schools, there's shortage because so many teachers fall out, are exhausted and can't cope anymore. And so there's quite a bit of elevation. Actually, really, the numbers are, I find here, what I hear here, I found, I don't have research on it, but I can see it in my practice and I can hear everywhere in the schools, there's a lot of shortage. There's a lot of people falling out.
There's a lot of shortage and it's a global issue. And it isn't like, there's a lot of people who would like to be doctors and nurses, et cetera. The training programs aren't ramping up to bring more people online. And the boomers are retiring like crazy.
Yes,
and so
I agree.
That's a solvable problem.
Yes.
It takes money and talent and commitment, but that's not an impossible problem. You ramp up the training and you stop being so restrictive on who can, have these roles. That would make a big difference. It takes a little time, but few places are heading that way. They're just saying, oh, it's not enough doctors.
Yeah, it's amazing here. The dentists, so many doctor specialties we have to wait like 4 to 6 months before we can have an appointment. So you can feel it's in so many fields. So I really agree.
And that's not going away.
No.
People, that's the old aging population thing.
Yes, I agree.
It's going to get more and more and more. Yeah.
So talking about burnout, specifically in your book, what is actually the burnout challenge? Because that's the title of your book. But
Good book.
can you talk a little bit about what is actually the challenge here?
Well, the challenge here is that people really want a lot out of their workplaces. They're not just looking for some activity to pay the bills, but they really are looking for core psychological motives to be fulfilled within this arena where they spend a lot of time at the higher end of their abilities. And they really do want this sense of belonging to be fulfilled. They want to have an idea of efficacy and capability that gets fulfilled. They want a sense of agency, the idea that they're not just always on the receiving end of somebody else's direction, but but they can make things happen. And they want to have their values realized through the work that they're doing, rather than just spinning their wheels doing things. So the challenge is designing workplaces for people, given that that's what people are all about. And
people
workplaces so often, and there so much of workplace design has sort of neglected these core aspects of people. And I think, again, as I see, more younger generations moving through schools and universities, et cetera, they're just going to want more of that. Like they're demanding lots of these, just next generations coming in, and workplaces are, they're sort of getting it, but they're sluggish in terms of putting things together. And then once in a while go, well, in my day, I blah, blah, blah. And it's
there's a change in consciousness in that, because 30 years ago, you were working in the same company for so many years. Now, when they're not happy, these youngsters, when they feel it's not this, it's not what I want, it's not what I love to do, they go somewhere else. It's quite.
They go somewhere else. Yeah. And well, some of them are, okay, but a lot of them are really talented people that you need to get the job done.
Yes.
And so, so I think the challenge is designing workplaces that really work for people. That is the challenge, because the idea isn't how can I put up with a bad job is not to me the solution of burnout. The solution to burnout is how can I design the job, and how can we structure workplaces so that burnout just isn't the obvious reaction.
Wow. That's an interesting one, eh? And that is actually, like you say, has a lot to do with those 6 things we were talking about.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's right. If you make those work, then you got a whole lot that's working right there. It's relationships, it's reward, it's fairness. Fairness is a huge issue these days, and people are very readily can feel unfairly treated. So it's a piece that just doesn't mean, oh, sure, I'm fair. No, that isn't. Leaders have to get a lot deeper into that thought than
I love
like
that value, though. That it's a beautiful word, fairness. It's a really beautiful word that we all, not just in the workplace, I think, in our social relationships as well, in every single relationship, fairness is a big one, I think. So beautifully said. Michael, to finish off the conversation, because time goes quickly, is there any basic advice or first step advice that you would give, or any statement that you live by, being an burnout expert, that something that you could bring to the audience that you live by, that you would say, I don't know, only do what you love, or something, something that you can, or you live by personally, something you live by?
Well, I would say too, the general term would be to know yourself, and that you really got to reflect on, you can't go into a workplace, you can't go into a job thinking that they're going to look after you well and everything's going to be fine. You got to go into it like, this is a potentially risky place to be. I've got to have a clear idea of what I want from here. I've got to be able to track, note over time, is this happening? Is this working for me? Or is it, and to know, are you able to build the kind of relationships with other people that you really like to have? And it could be that, okay, in many ways you'd like to work remotely, but are you developing the relationships that you need in your life, that you really are, if you are working remotely, or do you need to do something that's more mixed that way? Something, knowing yourself, knowing what level of accomplishment and recognition really works for you. Can you just work for yourself regardless of what the world says, or you need some pats on the
Are
back
you
in order to
saying,
get through.
are you saying taking a little bit of more personal responsibility, not just
Yeah, you
being
gotta
the
have that. Yeah,
victim, but
right.
take action
Because
yourself?
where we see the action is between the people in the workplace. It's
Yes.
not the workplace's fault, but it's not the individual's fault, but it's a relationship breakdown. And when there's relationship breakdowns, you focus on the relationship. What's the space in between and
Wow.
how to shape that. And that both individuals and work and managers and leaders, but in workplaces, they're all part of the game here.
Yeah.
It's all something that needs to be thought through and improved.
Wow. Thank you so much. So the new book, The Burnout Challenge, is it out already? Can we buy it
Oh,
already?
yeah. You
Everywhere?
can buy it already wherever you buy books. Well, certainly Amazon has it everywhere, but I don't know where else people, the other places. But it's certainly out there, and people are buying it, people are reading it.
Oh,
So
great.
we're very pleased with its how
Thank you
it's being
so much
received.
for your input, because it's been a different conversation, and I really
Okay.
liked your input in this, because it makes you think, about how you go into a job, about the communication, about everything. Those 6 things for me were quite important. So thank you for that. And I will have a little break now, and I'll come back to the audience just now. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you. It's been a great conversation.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
Welcome back, and I really did enjoy this conversation, and I trust you did too, because it was so interesting to see burnout from a different kind of perspective, from an expert who has been, Michael Leiter has been, I think, more than 30, 40 years busy really helping organizations and in research and in surveys on how to make the workplace a better place for humans. And I really was encouraged by his definition that burnout has to do with, it's a compilation. It has to do with different things. It's not just about being tired a little bit, and it's about really being exhausted on a continuous basis and being discouraged in life and having that cynicism, meaning that maybe you used to love what you were doing, but more and more you become, if 80% of the work that you do is not exactly what you like and what you value and what you love, you become cynical. You have a cynicism that is going to deplete your energy, that is bringing you down. There's no more life force. We call it life force. And it's all those things together that make us burn out and really give that burnout more and more weight on your shoulders. And so I really was intrigued by the 6 pillars that Michael was telling us on how they try to change the situation in the workplace. And I'm just going to name them again so that you have that little summary of tools that you can actually see around you and reflect in yourself and see in your own workspace what is going on. So we talked about workload. Are you still loving what you're doing? Is there not too much pressure? How are you managing your workload? Secondly, control. Are you feeling in control of your situation, of your life? Thirdly, how is the reward going? And I find that a really important one, because we all need to be valued, rewarded, recognized in certain things that we do. And we need to give it to ourselves for sure. But it is so nice if you can get that reward as well in your working hours, in the workspace. The fourth one, not surprisingly, is the community. We all need, as humans, to belong. We all need that feeling of belonging. And so the community in any organization, in any company is really important. The fifth one is the fairness. And as Mike was telling us a little bit about that, we need to be treated fairly. There has been in so many years, there have been a lot of bullying, a lot of in the workspace, a lot of, I could even say, abuse, verbally, emotionally, even physically. Look at the Me Too initiative and all these things. There's been a change in the workplace on how we treat each other, whether we treat each other fairly or not. And the last one, of course, is values. I see it in my business, in my practice. I find it so important that my own values that I want in my business towards my clients, towards myself, towards anyone that I deal with. It is so important for me that authenticity, that integrity, that connection, that compassion, that empathy. It is so important for me. So I want you to look at your values as well and to look at the values that your company or your organization is putting out. So indeed, there needs to be more positivity. The more little positive things, like saying good morning, like saying thank you, it changes the dynamics, and it is so important. So Michael also talked about his book, The Burnout Challenge, and I really love that title because it is a challenge. And so many people are affected. So it is really worth your while maybe to go and have a look at the book. If you feel that in your environment there's a lot of burnout, if you are dealing with burnout, just go and have a look at the book. And so the last thing I want to say, which is important as well, is take responsibility for yourself. Know yourself. I think that is such a beautiful thing to close this interview with and this show of this week with. Know thyself, know yourself, know your values, go into that responsibility, into being, taking the steering wheel of your car, of your life into your own hands, and don't be a victim. Take action. If you feel there's need to be a change, whatever you are doing of work, of even in your own business, if you are a business owner, just see how you can change the workplace, how you can make that workplace better for your coworkers, for your colleagues, for whoever. So I'm going to leave you with that. Please take responsibility for yourself and enjoy being the director of your life. I will see you next week. Bye-bye for now.
From Stress to Authentic Success was presented by Danielle Sachs. Join Danielle at the same time next week here on UK Health Radio. And meanwhile, for more on how to thrive in business and everyday life by being true to yourself, go to daniellesachs.com.